What's up, guys? I'm Chris Spags here, back with another Four Corners video breaking down today's 9-game NBA slate, courtesy of Awesemo.com. Today's already been a bunch of news, a ton of lineup changes already going around, so like this video right now, leave a comment down below, tell me which player you think is going to be helped out the most by the various guys ruled out for rest and injuries and suspensions today. It helps me out a ton, it helps us build the community we have here on this YouTube channel, so like the video right now and leave a comment. The first corner I'm going to hit on is a game with the Heat visiting the Thunder. This one is a 211.5 point total, which represents a 6.3 point drop for the Thunder and a 2.6 point drop for the Heat. We're not going to see Russell Westbrook today after he picked up his 16th technical foul, which results in an automatic suspension. So it should be a day for Dennis Schroeder to pick up a start, and he's going to be one of the chalkier players on the slate at 43% expected ownership. He's been a 1.15 fantasy per minute guy, as well as a 33% usage guy in court time without Russell Westbrook. Those numbers up from 0.96 and 25% usage respectively for Dennis Schroeder. It's a good spot for him. I think you may want to come a little bit under the field here just to differentiate. There's so many games here, so many different point guards who can get out there. But I think the ceiling for Schroeder is there despite a tough matchup. His usage can get pretty high without Westbrook in there, so I like Dennis Schroeder. I just wonder if his ownership might be a bit too high given the amount of options we have on today's slate. Paul George should see some increased opportunity as well with Russell Westbrook sidelined. He's projected for 27% ownership right now. That seems more than fair to me. His price is still down to where he was with Russell Westbrook in the lineup. He's going to pick up a little bit of usage, going to pick up some more playmaking as well, some more rebounds as well. So I think it's a nice spot for Paul George. Steven Adams goes from a 0.98 fantasy point per minute guy to a 1.06 fantasy per minute guy, and that's enough to make me a little bit interested in Steven Adams with his price down. Without Russ out there rebound hunting, I think you're going to see a little more on the boards for Steven Adams. It's a good spot for him to be at, get some easy putbacks, get some easy rim runs on passes from Schroeder, so Adams looks like a decent play to me. On the Heat side, Josh Richardson was 2 for 17 last game with no Justice Winslow in the lineup. Justice Winslow's questionable right now. I think if Winslow's in, I would prefer him. If Winslow's out, I think you're going to see a ton of usage for Richardson again. Whether he does anything with it, I think we can see he's due for a bounce back after a game that poor. So if Winslow's in, play him. If Winslow's out, I think go to Josh Richardson. Bam Adebayo's been over 30.25 fantasy points in 4 out of his last 5 games. And I think he looks like he's in a decent spot, a nice price. Not a guy I'm trying to get to a ton, but I think he works. Kelly Olynyk as well has been over 31 minutes in his last 2, but he's had single-digit shots in his last 5 games. I think that could change here. The spacing could help him out a bit where he can get that offense going. They're going to need offense from somewhere, I would imagine, versus the Thunder. So I don't mind Olynyk here, but Bam does seem like the safer play out of the Miami bigs. Dwayne Wade's price is down a bit, but he shot 14 and 16 times in his last 2 games. This is his last game in Oklahoma City as part of his last dance tour. So as we all know, the Thunder, a popular place for any player to play. Who doesn't want a night out in Oklahoma City? So Dwayne Wade, I'm sure, going to bring extra motivation. I think he's in a good spot, though, with his price being down, so I don't mind him today. The scoring could be necessary for him, especially if Justice Winslow were out again. The next corner I want to hit on is a game with the Pelicans visiting the Mavs. This one is a 230.5 point combined total, which is a slate high, and that represents a 9.3 point boost for Dallas and a 2.6 point drop for the Pelicans. Luka Doncic projects for 28% ownership, and this is the kind of spot where I love Luka. A pace and space matchup, one where he can get some rebounds, get some open shots. No Drew Holiday near to impede him at all either, so this is a great spot for Luka, and I'll probably go above his ownership, even with it being that high. Dwight Powell's price is still up, but he's seeing at least 20 minutes in most games, and that was when he was hampered with foul trouble versus Cleveland, seeing in the high 30s some other times. Dwight Powell, a good play. His price still a little bit high, but I think the pace here should help him get some more rebounds. Also some easy looks to get as well, so a nice spot for Dwight Powell to get back on track today. Tim Hardaway Jr. has been over 36 minutes in his last 2 starts. I think he's in a good spot if he's in the starting rotation again, but there's a decent chance we see Dorian Finney-Smith move into the starting lineup because the defense that he brings may be more necessary than the shooting that Hardaway brings. I would watch the rotations closely here. Whoever's starting, I'd be more comfortable with. If Hardaway's in that starting rotation as well, I think he cuts into Jalen Brunson's opportunity enough where he makes him pretty much unplayable. Maxi Kleber has been over 30.25 fantasy points in 3 out of his last 4 games, and the pace and space again here should benefit him. I hope Dwight Powell stays in there enough where maybe Kleber gets a little bit less run, but I think overall Kleber looks like he's in a good spot. I have no problem with him. I think the spacing here really should benefit him because he can stretch the floor pretty well. On the Pelicans side, I don't think it's the time to fade Elfrid Payton yet. His price is up, but he's had 4 straight triple-doubles, all of which were over 51 fantasy points. It's a good spot for Elfrid Payton again. The teams have been really good against the Mavs at point guard. His usage rate not that high, so there's some risk there. I guess he doesn't get there scoring-wise, but the rebounds are there, the assists are there. Payton's been playing a ton of minutes, playing really well, so I'm okay to continue to ride with Elfrid Payton for tonight. Julius Randle's less appealing to me with Anthony Davis in the lineup, but he still did see 20 shots in that last game. They were both active versus Phoenix. I don't think you're going to see the 76.75 fantasy fantasy point ceiling that we saw versus Portland in a day in which Anthony Davis is in the lineup. But I think Randle's still at a reasonable price, so I don't mind him here. He's just not as much of a lock to me as he would be if Davis were out for some reason. Next corner I want to hit on, which I am definitely not re-recording because an injury broke while I recorded the initial version, is a game with the Bulls at the Suns, and this one is a 227.5 point combined total, which represents a 7.6 point boost for both the Bulls and the Suns. Devin Booker's been over 42 fantasy points in his last 4 games. He's also been over 67.25 fantasy points in 2 out of those last 4, so it's a good spot for Devin Booker. The fact that there's no Kelly Oubre, no Tyler Johnson also should open up some usage for him, some more ball handling time. This is a really good spot for Devin Booker, as long as the heat doesn't get to be too much for him, given the fact he's going to have a lot of these other weapons not available for him. And Kelly Oubre and Tyler Johnson were ruled out, which is why I'm redoing this right now. As a result, we're probably going to see more Josh Jackson, who looks like a much stronger play as a value today. We're also going to see some more DeAnthony Melton, who put up 29 fantasy points versus New Orleans the other day, a nice value guy. All these guys a little more appealing as a result of no Kelly Oubre and no Tyler Johnson. Thanks for the timing on that one, fellas. DeAndre Ayton hasn't shown much ceiling recently, but the poor Bulls rebounding could be a spot where he gets back on track. When Ayton's really pushed himself on the glass, that's when he's had his biggest days. I think it's a good spot for him. 16% expected ownership seems pretty fair, given the fact that Ayton, again, not showing a ton of ceiling, but he does have the capability to do so, just hasn't shown it recently. Zach LaVine's usage and role have been steady, and he really looks like the easiest Bull to trust. I think LaVine is in a nice spot here against the Suns team to defensively just not offering a lot. Also, I think the fact that, honestly, that LaVine is getting closer with Coach Jim Boylan, offering to pay fines with him. I think he's emerging as a leader of this team. He's really been the only guy to show up night after night, so I'm really comfortable with Zach LaVine as both a tournament play and a cash play. Otto Porter hasn't been too great recently, but he does have a pretty big ceiling that we've seen in games for him so far as a Bull. The turnovers also should help him out a bit here. The Suns pretty sloppy with the ball. Otto Porter, a known steals guy, so I think that could help him out getting some of the actual stats themselves, as well as some breakaway opportunities. So I like Porter a decent amount here. Lauri Markkanen's also now not shooting as much in addition to not rebounding. I do not want to have the 22% ownership expected for Lauri Markkanen today. His price is reasonable, so he can definitely spike an upside day, but I think going there at a high amount of volume doesn't make sense to me. I think if you had half as much, you can get a little taste of Lauri, and if he does have that big day, be protected, but I don't know that that big day is coming, and I want to see it happen because he's just not motivated out there on the court right now to do the things that he did best when he was really exceeding value. Robin Lopez is priced up, but he's still cheaper than Lauri Markkanen, and I'd honestly rather go to Robin Lopez. Him only having center eligibility makes him a bit less appealing because we obviously have those big ticket guys who can spike much higher upside days. But Lopez showed 44.5 fantasy point upside versus the Clippers. It's a pretty hospitable spot versus the Suns as well, and also a revenge spot for Robin Lopez too, so I don't mind Robin Lopez here, and again, I would prefer him to Lauri Markkanen. Chris Dunn's never the most appealing guy with Zach LaVine in the lineup, but with Lauri Markkanen's usage coming down, there's been a little bit more opportunity for Chris Dunn, shooting about 12-ish times a game. At his price and his matchup with the Suns, I think he could have enough upside. Again, also a little peripheral upside because of the Suns' turnovers, so a spot where I don't hate Chris Dunn, but the ceiling may not be there enough for tournaments. And the last corner I want to hit on is not a game itself, but really an update on everything that you need to watch out for, because there's a ton of injuries, a ton of guys ruled out right now due to rest, due to suspension. We already talked about Russell Westbrook up top, but there are a lot of other guys we also should hit on. CJ McCollum is going to be out with some knee injuries, and though the spot versus the Pacers isn't the best one, we've seen Damian Lillard push a 1.59 fantasy point per minute number, as well as Yusuf Nurkic push a 1.44 fantasy per minute number without CJ McCollum on the floor. Those guys also had big days versus San Antonio with 29 shots and 52 fantasy points for Lillard, 21 shots and 55 fantasy points for Nurkic in that spot versus San Antonio, which McCollum only missed a portion of the game. I think you're going to see a lot of usage today for Lillard and for Nurkic. Kawhi Leonard's been ruled out for rest, and that's a spot where Pascal Siakam and Marc Gasol should benefit. Siakam hasn't been doing a lot with the role left behind by Serge Ibaka, but when Leonard's been out, he's been a much stronger play. Gasol being in the lineup now should take a little bit off the ceiling of what we've seen from Siakam in games without Leonard, but Gasol and Siakam, I think, are both playable together and separately. I think you also could see some uptick for Norman Powell, who's been a 0.91 fantasy point per minute guy in time without Kawhi Leonard, as well as OG Anunoby, who doesn't have quite as much upside to me, but I think he's an interesting play. So again, Kawhi Leonard being out going to open up a lot of opportunity for all these guys. Kyle Lowry is currently questionable, and the expectation is that Fred VanVleet's going to enter the starting lineup. He's currently projected for 44% ownership on that assumption. I think that would make Jeremy Lin an interesting play, especially if he were the starter and VanVleet were coming off the bench. I think Jeremy Lin getting that starting run. He didn't do a lot with it last time. He lost minutes to VanVleet, who played over 30 minutes yesterday, while Lin just got 16. But if that went the other way, Lin could be the guy at low ownership to have the big day. And if Lowry is ruled in, he's been a fantastic play every time Kawhi Leonard's been out. So just plug Lowry in if we do know that he is available. DeMarcus Cousins and Andre Iguodala are both out due to rest, so really all the Warriors should benefit here. I prefer Kevin Durant at his price, though I think his ankle limitations could be a problem. Steph Curry, really Klay Thompson. You could talk me in any combination of those three guys. I think Draymond Green, though, could be the biggest beneficiary overall. Still at a reasonable price. It's not a perfect matchup versus the Spurs, but he should see some more rebounding, should see some more shots, should also see some more playmaking opportunity thanks to no Iguodala. So Draymond Green, I think, would be the biggest beneficiary on paper, but all these guys really look fine and a lot better because there's no Cousins and to a lesser extent, no Iguodala. Blake Griffin's been ruled out for rest on a back-to-back. This is a spot where I'm comfortable going back to Andre Drummond. He's been a 1.44 fantasy point per minute guy without Blake Griffin. Could also see some more usage for Reggie Jackson and Luke Kennard. But Blake Griffin being out, he looked like he was in a really good spot, and now he's not going to be in there. That game with Cleveland should get more competitive as a result, and I think Andre Drummond definitely gets a lot more appealing as a result. And in that same game, Kevin Love is currently questionable. If he's in, he looks like a great play. If he's out, Cedi Osman gets a little bit stronger. Could also see some more run from Marquise Chris. Ante Zizic as well is awaiting the status of Tristan Thompson. As long as Tristan Thompson's still out, Ante Zizic looks fine. And Ante Zizic would become a better play if Love were ruled out. So watch that one closely too. Watch all these things closely. So many injuries to watch out for. It's going to be one of those days, guys. And there we go. Those are my thoughts on today's slate. So make sure to check the link in the description for my column, The Switch and Hedge. There's a lot more details on all the games. A lot of stuff we had to rush through today just to make sure we hit on all the important news items. So please go check that link out. And please like the video and leave a comment down below. Tell me which guy you think is going to benefit the most from all these injuries, rest, suspensions, all of that going on. Like the video right now. Leave a comment. It helps us out quite a bit. And last but not least, check the promo code Switch and Hedge. It'll give you 50% off your first month at Awesemo.com. All the ownership projections and rankings are all going to be updated for all this news throughout the day. So please use that promo code Switch and Hedge. Get half off your first month. I'll be back again tomorrow for another Four Corners video. So good luck. Really, good luck.